I'm Premnandhini Satgunam. I'm an Associate Research Optometrist at the V Prasad Eye Institute, Hyderabad. I think testing vision for babies in general is very challenging because it sort of sometimes is very counterintuitive for people, because how do you even make babies read a letter chart, because they are not going to read. But it's very important that we test vision in babies, because the number of blind years, if they ever go blind, is going to be much more than somebody who is going to become blind at a later age. So I think catching children at a very early age and correcting whatever vision problem there is to correct is very important. So I was always been interested in pediatric vision, and particularly focusing on children with multiple disabilities, because I've always felt that children who have special needs is always often been a neglected population, particularly in a country like India. So this sort of has always been my interest. As soon as I finished my optometry degree, I sort of was looking at ways in which I could improve the care we can provide for this particular population. And then that took me to doing my graduate studies. So I did my master's and PhD at the Ohio State University. Prior to that, I did my optometry at Elite School of Optometry in Chennai, Shankar Nethralaya. And then post that, I actually focused on vision rehabilitation at Scapen's Eye Research Institute at Harvard Medical School. So that particular training taught me a lot, and it taught me that we could definitely develop better ways of testing vision and visual functions on anyone. But when I came back to India, I wanted to focus more so on the pediatric population, because that had always been my first interest. So the particular innovation that I'm focusing today it's called the Pediatric Perimeter. So typically when we go for vision testing, everybody knows that you would be shown an eye chart, and we would have to see what is the smallest line that you can actually read. And that is only one particular measurement of vision, which is called visual acuity. But in general, we always assume vision to be what is the smallest letter that you can see. Beyond the visual acuity, there are many other vision functions also. And one of the important vision function is how much of a side vision somebody has. So if somebody has a very, very narrow side vision, what we call as tunnel vision, then that becomes a problem for them to navigate and be mobile. So these are the people who are going to bump into objects, knock down against a pole or something. So this particular test is called the visual field testing, the amount of side vision somebody has. So when it comes to adults, there are a lot of instruments that is available to check visual fields on adults. What it requires is the adult has to be seated with their chin and head rested against a chin rest and a forehead rest. They are asked to look straight, not to move their eye. And anytime when they see a light coming on the side, they are supposed to press a button. And this is how we measure visual fields on adults. Whereas in babies, there is no way we could use that sort of a technology to test visual fields in babies. So what I was interested was to develop a device that I called it as Pediatric Perimeter, that would tell me how much of a side vision the baby has. This is important because at a very early age itself, we can find out if this child is going to have a mobility problem. Sometimes there could be bigger issues, like there could be a tumor in the brain that could cause a visual field defect. So if we could do this test and pick that up early on, then we can actually even refer this baby to a neurologist, and that would involve in a life-saving procedure for the child. So I wanted to actually study visual fields in babies, and since there is no clinical device available for testing this on babies anywhere in the world, so I just had to make one for myself. So we had this opportunity of working with a team of engineers in our very first workshop that was put together with V Prasad Eye Institute and MIT Media Lab Camera Culture Group. That was a very interesting sort of like a collaboration that we had. We had engineers, and they worked with the clinicians, and they were trying to find solutions for us. So I brought this particular problem to them, and I told them that this is something what I want to measure. So they went ahead, and we creatively sort of co-designed and tested these particular, like how do we sort of like design the device, what are all the things that we could do, because remember with a baby we would have only like 5 minutes or the first few minutes of their attention. So we need to be very creative in how we can catch this particular information. So this whole thing, the sequence of things that happened sort of helped us to develop a first prototype. Presently we have a third prototype which is close enough to being a product. So that's how the whole innovation came up in towards inventing this pediatric perimeter. So what this device has is actually a hemispherical dome shaped structure. And as I said, with babies we will not be able to have them give us a verbal response or make them push buttons. So what we had is we had light emitting diodes, the LEDs attached to the hemisphere. And we test the babies in a dark room. They go under this dome like as if you are doing a CT scan or something like that, but it's of course non-invasive. So the baby goes under the dome in a dark room, and then there is this light that comes up. So wherever the light comes up, and if the baby can detect that light in the side, then the baby makes an eye movement towards that. So using eye movements as a surrogate measure tells us that the baby actually detected that light in the side. So that tells us what could be the extent of their sight vision. And we had certain algorithms, because as I said earlier, with a baby you are going to get only that first 5 minutes of their attention. So first we wanted to rule out that there is no gross field defect. So we give them a full hemisphere LED stimulus, and the baby makes an eye movement towards that. And then we check only one certain quadrants alone just to make sure there aren't any gross field defect. If the baby makes an eye movement to all that, we are certain there is no gross field defect. Then we go on to probing individual meridians. So we just show one LED at a time and we bring it from the side towards the center. Wherever the baby makes an eye movement, then we know that is the visual field extent of that child. So of course it depends quite a lot on the cooperation of the baby also. Some of them of course are not too happy staying there for too long. But importantly, what we have found from our testing is, especially children who have delayed milestones, so children who have cerebral palsy and mental retardation, we were able to check even as old as 8-year-old and 13-year-old on this device. And we have been able to successfully quantify visual field defects on this particular population as well. So that was a new learning for us. Our future plan essentially is to take this, as I said, this is the third prototype, but it is close enough to being a product. So the future plan is essentially to make it as a complete full-fledged product. We would be happy to work with some industrial partners who can sort of take it at a bigger level and manufacture it for us. And the future plan is we could have this device installed in every neonatal care unit, and a pediatrician could use it and find out whether a baby will have a vision problem or not. So it could be used as a screening device so that we can catch early on any child who is potentially having a vision problem. So that way if we can intervene early on, we would save a number of blind years for that child. So that the future plan is to take it to the larger masses.